Hi, I'm Jenn Givhan, and I am a poet and novelist. My 2 books have come out this year, my 5th poetry collection and 3rd novel. This is Belly to the Brutal from Wesleyan University Press, and this is River Woman, River Demon from Blackstone Publishing. Thank you so much, Kai Coggin, for supporting me and so many other writers with your Wednesday night poetry and all you do in the literary community. And thank you all for listening as I read you some poems from my newest collection, Belly to the Brutal. This collection is what I call healing the bloodlines of mothers and daughters and generational or intergenerational trauma. There's a quote here from Margot Temes: "My body, the yokes of my body, stories we must tell to undo what has been done." And that's from her collection, Raven Eye. And so that prefaces the entire collection. And I'm gonna start with the Nopal. Afterward, after each death, still the question, what did it mean to be alive? I carried a Nopal into the confessional, sickly, potted, and dying. I loved it with my salt. My daughter asks if I'll plant a tree beside all the lonely trees growing alone. The cells she and I passed through the blood barrier, flashes of bright pink bulbs at the tips of our organs as she grew inside me. Cells we still share, planting traces of ourselves within each other through the migration. Cells whose premise induces the conclusion, someday, one of us will carry a ghost. In heaven, I asked what became of the Nopal. Then the pads of my hands greened and spindled into a cathedral of cacti. So this next poem, I Am Dark, I Am Forest, was first published in Poetry Magazine, and you can find it there, and it's a prose poem. I am dark, I am forest. I carried a bowl of menudo into the forest. I carried my bisabuela's tripas, not daring ask whose intestines I carried, con cilantro y radish y cebolla chopped fine. I carried the sewing machine they'd slip-stitched her to in the garment district downtown. I carried the forest crackling against asphalt where her chanclas burnt and melted, so I carried her too. I wore no red. I bore no basket. There was no forest but an avocado tree in the backyard of the house they made her sell to get her Medicare for her diabetes shots. I carried her sugar water, a hummingbird great-granddaughter. I carried her flickering, her black and white screened. I carried her face, the scars her warped esposo left her granddaughter. Carried those wounds through the womb, not wolf, but blue-eyed man. I stirred the menudo, my belly, the pot, scalding into the forest. I carried, and that tree I chopped down, chopped into a boat that carried my mother and my bisabuela across the chili red sopa, the blood water broth. Named her daughter. What forest have we made for her? I cannot see. I carried darkness into that forest and chopped it out. So again, these poems are very much about mother-daughter connections, but my son is in here quite a bit too, and it's for all mothers and children and really all marginalized people. And it's like my second poetry collection and River Woman, River Demon, a protection spell to keep us safe. Here's one dedicated to my sunshine. It's called The Flash. My 11-year-old son has forgotten not to eat on my bed. He loves watching the flash from my room with the widest windows, the warmest place in our house each winter. and with the coneflower warmth of his brown skin veiled in his bright red suit, he tucks his kinky curls under the cap and ghosts from room to room undetected, sneaking cookies, till I climb beside him into a pile of crumbs. "You're grounded," I echo, and he is sobbing. But what he says catches the pit of wax burning always inside me. We got him into special ed classes last year after years of fighting with teachers and breakdowns over homework and his father yelling, "You've got to learn to listen," where I kept insisting he's trying. He just doesn't understand. And here he slides onto my floor, tears and mucus streaming down his cheeks onto the superhero costume he wears 24/7. The toddlers at the park following him around perennially because he's Iron Man, Flash, Captain America. "Mama, I don't know what's wrong with me," between hiccuping sobs. "I forgot, I was hungry. Your bed is warm. I'm afraid I'll go to jail when I'm grown. I'm afraid I'm bad. I always do the wrong thing." I'm already hugging him on the floor where I've joined him as sirens flick on screen, thinking of how his little sister ties his shoes. How years back his best friend scolded, "You have to learn to tie your shoes, Jer. Do you want your mom to tie them for you when you're 20? And we laughed before we realized we should not have been laughing. How at night I watch him breathing and pray because when I screamed at his father for screaming at him, he said he has to learn to listen. I'm trying to keep him safe. Much later, I ask our boy with a milkshake in his hand what he would do if the police, like they did to his daddy in Texas, he beeps, "Electronic Jeremiah is not here right now. Please leave a message." He flashes so quick, I never see him vanish. Okay, I think I have time to read you one or two more. So this one is called The Excavation, and again, it is the wisdom of my children, which is quite a bit of what you find here in Belly to the Brutal. This one was published first in The Nation. The Excavation. My 8-year-old daughter is teaching me how to live with myself. After 34 years in this body, I can finally split myself in two and marvel that now I pass the Bechdel test. What I've let men scavenge, my collarbones, femurs, the fleshy pads of my inner thighs, bite marks butterflying from the clotted cream that cornmeal death has made of my skin, given way to blood poisoning. I haven't done much but get dumped by one and warn the other to stop raping me when I'm dream coming. And he finally, after 13 years together and a year of divorce, understands a sleeping body moaning is not consent. And while he's had to learn truths he should have learned as a boy, I chart a map to my unlearning. I re-watch the film strips of my girlhood with my girl, and she covers her face at the kissy scenes, and very practically, very kindly but firmly, life coaches the girls and women, you are worth so much more than you know. And finally, I hear from the gift of my womb what my mother never taught me. My daughter transforms the desert of my memory, peels the spines from the cacti, fashions me a crown that asks, who were you when you weren't blooming only for the boys? And I recall the night blooming Sirius, whose bats fly hundreds of miles one night of the year to sustain themselves on the sweet nectar, and how many mornings I missed, how many dark things I emptied myself for. My daughter is a graveyard, by which I mean ripe for rebirthing. She pulls me from the beds I've buried and tells me if she is wise, it's because I've taught her, by which she means I've held myself deep within myself all along. I've plucked bones and swapped for jackrabbit, for wood rat, for javelina. Oh, tusks, oh, glorious horns I've borne from daughter, from the unmothered loam. I want to read one more to you that feels like I wrote it just for you, and I don't want to leave you without reading this poem to you. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. This is in the last section of the collection, and it's called Dear Hearts, we feel good when we do what we've evolved to do. And I've evolved to love you. Yes, you. I've just spoken with a grasshopper on a lilac bush, his muted eyes like a mask, his face, one I conceive must be hatted when he dreams. And I wanted to share this with you. I had to draft a poem for you because my heart believed you've been scammed too, have been sold healing crystals that turned out to be gravel from the snake oiler's own slick driveway, but in your palm, charged with your light, turned beautiful anyway. This world. Can you imagine? We live in a world with the word honeysuckle. The dog in the backyard uproots the rooted vegetables and gnaws on the varmint. The scientist explains our gullible natures as evolutionary tripwires. Don't feel ashamed, dear hearts. You believed in something more bearable coming your way. Thank you so much again for listening. Thank you, Wednesday Night Poetry and Kai Coggin, and so much poetry love to you all. Mwah. Blessings. Badasses.